Hello, my name is Carnegie and I'm what's known as a Davis facilitator. Today what I'd like to talk about is the anniversary of this book. It is the 30th anniversary of this book, The Gift of Dyslexia. And the full title is The Gift of Dyslexia, Why Some of the Smartest People Can't Read and How They Can Learn. This was written over 30 years ago by a man called Ronald D. Davis, and I get my job title from the gentleman who wrote this book, The Gift of Dyslexia. It is 30 years this June that Ron wrote the book, The Gift of Dyslexia. And to me, Ron is an extraordinary individual. I sometimes think, or I sometimes wish, that Ron had not called his book The Gift of Dyslexia, because I think in some ways this is somewhat misleading. And the reason I would have preferred a different title would be something along the lines of what is causing dyslexia, or the cause of dyslexia and how to correct it, and why some of the smartest people who can't read and how they can learn. Now, I don't have a problem with the name The Gift of Dyslexia either, and when we take a look at the reasons why Ron called his book The Gift of Dyslexia, we understand why. Ron wrote this book in probably the early 90s. He published it in 94, in June of 94. And when we look at Ron's work and we understand his work, what we realize is Ron has discovered what is causing dyslexia. He then has gone on and written a book called The Gift of Learning, which covers topics like ADD, ADHD, math problems like dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dysphasia, auditory processing disorder. He also wrote a book after as well called Autism and the Seeds of Change, and there's a co-author on this one called Abigail Marshall, who is a very brilliant lady as well. When we look at Ron's work and we look at what Ron discovered about his own dyslexia and his own autism, we realize that it is actually as profound as the discoveries of people like Galileo, Sir Isaac Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein. And for me, what is described in this book is the equivalent of E equals MC squared. And I sometimes refer to Ron's work as the E equals MC squared of learning disabilities. For me, Ron's work is profound, and it changed my life and changed the lives of nearly every facilitator I've ever talked to. And for the last 15 years, I've been working as a Davis facilitator using Ron's techniques and methods that are outlined in his books. I think a lot of what Ron is saying in his books is misunderstood. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I think The Gift of Dyslexia is often a misleading title when we truly understand Ron's work. So why did Ron call it The Gift of Dyslexia? Well, I think, and having done the research and asked people in the Davis organization, it was really about the time that he was writing this book and what was being said. When he published his book in 94, the terminology learning disability had come along, and it was being pushed incredibly hard through the school system, throughout English-speaking world, and people got hold of this idea of a learning disability and embraced it. I think one of the things that people were talking about at the time was, well, if my son or daughter has dyslexia, that is, they are penalized, or they are held back, or they are disadvantaged in the same way as somebody who is in a wheelchair, who cannot run or walk, has a disability, or somebody who is blind, who cannot see. So there's sort of a hard, concrete, you can't do this thing. And that idea was sort of grabbed hold of by well-meaning parents at the time, because the school systems back in the 1990s just didn't acknowledge dyslexia as a learning disability and just were not interested. So Ron's book, The Gift of Dyslexia, was really trying to tell people, look, there is a huge upside to being dyslexic. And it doesn't mean every dyslexic is going to be a genius with everything they touch, which is the misunderstood ideas behind that title. There is a very big positive side to being dyslexic or ADD or autistic. Any of what I like to think of as learning labels. There are over 70 in the DSM, I think, at this point, and they range everything from dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dysphasia, auditory processing disorder. There are anxiety disorders. And then there's the spectrum of ASD. And when we really understand Ron's work, we realize that in the 1980s, a severely dyslexic, severely autistic engineer discovered what was causing dyslexia and has a great deal to say about all of these other learning difficulties that people have. If you want to really understand Ron's work, you basically have to either become a Davis facilitator, take the training and actually become a facilitator, or you have to do a program for yourself if you're dyslexic yourself, or if you have a child who's dyslexic, they actually have to go and do one of the many Davis programs that there are. And we have programs aimed at dyslexia, we have programs aimed at dyscalculia, we have programs aimed at ADHD, we have programs aimed at autism spectrum. I'm going to say it again because it is an important point that people need to understand. When we look at the current paradigm or the current narrative or the story that we have been told over my lifetime is that dyslexia is a disability. If we look at education, psychology, and neurology, neurology is basically now saying that education is waiting for psychology and psychology is waiting for neurology. Neurology is now saying we actually don't know what is causing these learning problems. We used to think it was damage, but since the invention of fMRI scans and being able to look at a live brain while it's doing certain activities, we can see that it's just difference, not damage. But we don't know what's causing that damage. So neurology has come along with this term and called it neurodiversity or neurological diversity, which is just another way of saying we don't know. So when you look at what everyone else is saying, everyone in education, everyone in psychology, and everyone in neurology, they are basically saying we do not know what is causing any of these learning problems. So I think it is a very bold statement and a very interesting idea, and one that very often people struggle with, that a very mild-mannered, very unusual, severely dyslexic, severely autistic person discovered what is causing dyslexia in the 1980s. And that, I think, professionally must be a very big pill for everyone else to swallow. I've been working with the Davis methods now for 15 years, like I said, and every time I do a Davis program, I get an extremely positive result. I have people who are very young, who are non-readers, learning to read. I have people who are 2-3 years behind in their literacy skills, catch right up and are reading at grade level and now doing very well. I most recently worked with a very autistic, dyslexic girl who is basically failing in school by every measure, is now back in school and doing extremely well. So if you find yourself with any of the learning labels and you would like to find out more about how the Davis method can help you or a loved one, or if you want to train as a professional, you want to train in the Davis method, then I encourage you to go to the link in the description and go and follow the link to the website, which will be for the main Davis page. If you're in Ottawa, Canada, and you'd like to continue this conversation with me, then please go to my website and you can contact me there. That's it for now. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.